About a year ago, I started a journey, one with no map and no destination. My heart would guide me as I explored brand new landscapes, food, and culture. I got lost in the things I love and the pursuit of my dreams. Come with me as I continue this journey. I'd like to invite you to get lost in Portland.
Sound is speeding.
This is Lost in Portland, take one.
Welcome to the first episode of Lost in Portland. I'm your host, Chris Franklin. I'm here with the proprietors of the Boysfort. We have Jake and Rolf. And let's get right to it.
All right.
Tell me a little bit about Boysfort. What was the inspiration?
Well, we were asked to do a pop-up shop in 2011, and we decided that we needed to do a shop that had cool stuff for guys that was locally found.
Mm-hmm. I noticed the curation of this place. It's pristine. Everything's placed really well. The artists you bring in all bring a very unique value. Something that says uniquely Portland in all of their art. What's the process like in curating a place like Boysfort?
When we first started Boysfort, it was sort of nose to the grindstone, and we didn't have the luxury of like stepping back and looking at what we were doing. And so a lot of things came to the fort that we didn't eventually think were what we call fort-worthy.
Okay.
So now when something comes in the door, or a person comes in the door with a product or an art, piece of art, we look at it and that's the first question that goes through our heads. We don't say it out loud to the person. Is this item fort-worthy? Because it's odd, so many things can work together in the context of what Boysfort is, but you know when it doesn't work.
Okay.
And an artist doesn't necessarily see their art as not fitting into a place.
I would imagine so.
Because it's your art. So that's the main, is it fort-worthy? Does it work with everything else that's sitting around it? And,
Okay. Do you have an example of what would be fort-worthy? An artist?
We always say we know it when we see it.
You know it when you see it.
It's like,
Yeah.
At Boysfort, it's not necessarily, even though every single thing in Boysfort is a really amazing thing, it's not the individual objects, it's the mix of the objects.
Right.
We don't segregate artists and say, this artist is here and this artist is here. It's like, if you don't work with all the artists in the fort so that we can move everything constantly, which is what we do, then it doesn't work. It just won't work. So,
Yeah. So it's Boysfort is really like a collection of everything put together. You know what I mean? So
it's a total.
Going on
an
with that.
experience.
Where'd you get the name?
Well, we were racking our brains, like, okay, what would a guy's store be,
Right.
named? So we were like Bachelor Pad or
Man cave.
Man cave.
They all sound kind of sleazy.
And they
you know?
sounded
It's like,
gross and
Yeah.
sleazy. So, but we were at Rolf's house and we were Googling names and stuff, and I looked out the window and I said, Rolf, you have a Boysfort in your backyard, which is his outdoor living room.
It's outdoor living room. It's
Like a
called the
summer
Boys
house.
Fort.
Right.
And so we Googled Boysfort and hit an article the Oregonian had done on his backyard. Was the first thing that popped up. And so I thought, well, that's perfect.
Boys Fort. It was immediate. We just
Organic.
said, oh, it's Boys Fort. Okay, that's it.
And Boysfort brings with it a nostalgia and a memory. It immediately takes you back to a point in time. And, and we think a lot of guys are still like, they still have that boy thing in them.
Right.
And Boysfort is a place where you can collect all your special things and protect yourself or hide out, or it's your own special space. And that's what it is.
A place where we could all go to be grown man children.
Yeah.
Once again. I often equate Portland to my Never Never Land. Where like this sentiment is true. I come here and I see everybody playing in the parks, doing, juggling, all kinds of different hobbies, and to me it's a place where people forgot to grow up. It's a place where you could be a child, you could have fun, and that's what drew me to this location. Is it reminds me of that feeling of just being young. You have over here slingshots, in the shop, right next to beautiful art, beautiful merchandise. You have handmade bags. It's just a sentiment that always comes back. It's a beautiful curation of what Oregon means to me, and I think you've done a super job. There's a philosophy that keeps on coming up when I read about you guys, and that's manthropology. Talk to me about manthropology.
When we first started, people would say, "Well, what is Boysfort? I don't get it." I think it was self-defense more than anything. We'd say, "Well, do you know the store Anthropology?" And they'd say yes, and they said, "Well, we'd say, well, it's kind of like a manthropology." And they go, "Oh, I get it." And so then it just kind of stuck, and we didn't mean for it to stick.
Right.
We weren't trying to brand ourselves that way.
We were just trying to think of what would be a popular equivalent, or like a mainstream equivalent that people would
understand
could wrap their brains around, because it is, when you walk in, there's a lot of stuff in here, and it's almost as if it's an installation, and so, and it's just us being true to ourselves and kind of what we kind of envision as far as our retail. But, to the person just walking off the street, it's like, is it an art gallery? Is it a shop? It's a little bit of everything. But
I think to maybe too many people, sometimes it's a curiosity shop.
Right.
Whereas we want it to be a retail experience.
Right.
But like Jake said, it's what we do. We can't help but make pictures out of anything that's in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we think. We think visually. So, Boysfort is manthropology. It's interesting, when we were putting this all together, we went, oh, it's great. Everything's working. We have a name, we have a style, we have an idea. Oh, there's one problem. Men don't spend money. Because men do not spend money as a rule. I mean, that's not true. I spend money like crazy. But
on design.
Or on, yeah, I guess they have to be committed to what they're looking at, wanting to buy.
I mean, I think men, style-wise, are kind of evolving, and
definitely.
And they're paying closer attention and taking care of what what they choose and what they go after. So we were trying to appeal to that man, but the truth is, it's more like people who shop for men.
It's a gift shop. Gift shop for the boys in your life.
Like women.
We were a little nervous about that, but all of a sudden we went, oh, it's working. Women love Boysfort.
Yeah.
And they jokingly ask at the door, are girls allowed? And we always say, if you know the password, or no, or whatever. You have to gauge your customer very carefully, because some people don't have senses of humor. Most people who come in Boysfort always have a sense of humor.
And Boysport's very irreverent. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It has a sense of humor.
We learned early on, you can get away with murder if you call yourself Boysfort.
Yeah.
You can say anything, and it's okay. We have some of the most, I don't know what we call it, irreverent. Some of our greeting cards are a little on the borderline on what you can get away with.
I've noticed that.
But, people just buy them in the droves.
And if people come in and they're in our space and they're enjoying the space, we want them to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
We want them to, have memories. And so, so if a greeting card gets somebody to laugh,
It's fair game.
You know what? It's something unique you find in small business. It's called character. A lot of these big box shops, they offer similar items that are manufactured in the hundreds of thousands. There's no personality behind it. I've asked this question before, and I was wondering if you could go back to the manufacturing process. Is there any criteria in the manufacturing process for you to bring an item in?
Not necessarily, other than it needs to. I mean, right now, so far, our focus has been Portland area businesses or artists or craftspeople, and as long as it's designed or made in Portland, that's one of the criteria. But it's also kind of regional. And
it's regional, and then
starting
also
to move west coast.
there's a trend that we notice. It's not a trend. It's a state of mind and the state of what it is. The products that we think of most as like what Boysfort are, and that work the best, their creators and their makers are so impassioned about that product that they make that it shows.
Absolutely.
As opposed to somebody goes, well, I make these. And we go, yeah, you do. And lately I've been thinking, just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should.
Right.
And that often comes into play with figuring out, does it work? Does it have a purpose at Boysfort?
Right.
Yeah, some of our best products you look at and you go, God, that's just so great. And the person behind that product is great too.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, as much as the product being great, it's also the relationship that we have with the artist, and those are often our best collaborations.
Right.
And it makes us want to push that product even more.
Yeah, life's too hard to work with people that aren't fun to work with.
Right.
It's like, yeah. And we don't see artists very often. The people that we work with, I mean, we'll see them every now and then, but it's really nice to know that you really like that person and that you're working hard to sell. Because we talk about everything in the store every day to anyone who asks. We know everything in the store has a story. Every product has a story. And it's like you go a little further for that artist that you're kind of got a big old man crush on because they're so cool.
And you're on their team.
Yeah,
you know them as an
absolutely.
individual.
Absolutely. They're Fort members.
They're right. They know the password. Absolutely. It started with an installation in 2011.
Yes. So it started as a part of the city had a program called the PDX Holiday Pop-Ups and Pop-Up Shops, and so we came in on their fourth year.
I think it was the
third year, and then we did 2 pop-ups, 2011, 2012, and both completely different. One was in a similar space like this, so we had 3,800 square feet, beautiful windows, lots of light, marble floors. It was quite a space. And the next one, we did it in 500 square feet. And it was super intimate, tiny, and dark, had no windows. But they were both really cool. They're both cool in different ways. And so each space has kind of dictated how the fort looks or how it evolves. And so our space here is great because it's just kind of a big blank canvas and you can do anything you want.
Right. So from 2011, you had the pop-up shops. And it was 2013 when you opened here in this location in downtown.
Yep.
Tell me about the process in between time.
There's a lot of scary time in that time.
Scary.
Because when you're starting a business, you don't necessarily. You always hope for the best. You always think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but there's so many things to stop you. There's so many. Just commerce itself can stop you. And so it was tough going, and it still is. It always is. But, you know, every day is a challenge. But getting in this space was kind of like turning the corner for us, I think. This was kind of like, before we'd always been a temporary or a pop-up, and people would say, oh, where are you popping up next time? And so when we opened this place in May of 2013, customers who had been following us all along would say, oh, so how long will you be in this pop-up? And it was really fun to say, for as long as you can imagine, we have a lease. And I was like, well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So it was a great, but it gave us a lot of time, too, to think and to analyze what we're doing and how we're doing things. And is this necessarily how we perceive Boysfort and what we want Boysfort to be? Because to a lot of people, it's still a mystery. I mean, what the hell is that? You know, it's like...
We came at it completely backwards. We didn't really set out. We didn't sit down and say, Rolf, let's open a store. Rolf and I both have had years and years of retail background, design background, and we work well together. And so we thought, well, sure, we can do a pop-up shop. We know we have a band of artists we know, and we can buy some paint on this paycheck and some lumber on this paycheck and just build ourselves a store.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that. But we knew it was going to be 2 months long, and then we didn't know what we would do. And
it was going to be over.
It's going to be done.
We were going to be done. Then we'd have to figure out what our life was going to be then.
But then we kept getting emails from people for months and months saying, "Where'd you go? Where can I find this thing? We really loved your store." So then we started thinking. We're like, "Okay, well, maybe we need to think about what this would be like as a full-time thing." So completely backwards.
Yeah, almost as
Guerrilla
an
style.
obligation.
Yeah.
And an obligation in that you owe it to the artist and you owe it to your clientele to provide that service.
Yeah, in a way we had created a community. And
on your point, Chris,
Yeah.
I think we owed it to ourselves. We enjoyed the experience so much, and when you're on a high of like, oh my God, something's working, I'm doing something and it's working, it's like, not much else had worked in my long life, and it was like, oh my God, I need to keep this going. We both needed this. We weren't doing anything. We
were kind of between jobs, and it was a creative outlet that was really satisfying. And a surprise. It was a complete surprise. We just thought, I mean, the city gave us this amazing space. It was in the Galleria building where the new Target is. And we walked in and we were like, you're joking. Like, it was this giant, beautiful store space. And we thought, okay.
The women who were in charge walked away from it, and I said, Jake, we can't do this. We can't do this. And Jake's, you're just wrecking this. You're just wrecking this.
We can do this.
Like,
and then we said, okay,
we'll do it.
Tighten our belts and fill this store. And we did. We just rallied around and found anyone who had something we liked and said, let's go.
So like, let's put on a show.
So from acquiring this space to the day it opens.
It's really interesting. People will come in and they go, God, you guys are doing so well. This is great. And I think if people realized how much it cost to put this together, no one would believe it, because we literally had no money. We had no backing. We had no funding. We had no bank account. Literally everything was done by borrowing, donations, scrap piles. But that's kind of our talent. We do that really well. When we design, we can often design in the cheapest method as opposed to like starting up here and then working down.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's very grassroots. And like I said, we just came at it at a different angle. And I think there's a lot of businesses now after 2008, that, banks aren't going to just give you a loan. Or,
And you have to be resourceful.
And you got to be resourceful. And it may be a slow growth rather than, hitting the ground running with some money, and you know,
forces you
just
to be a
going.
lot more creative too. I mean, you look around Boysfort and you go, how did they do that? Well, because we didn't have any money to do it any other way. But it works for Boysfort. And like I said earlier, you can get away with murder when you have a name like Boysfort.
Right.
It's more casual. It's more, oh. And then we said, you know, I agonized at the very beginning because it was things I thought, oh, that doesn't look very professional. That isn't. And then I said, oh, but it just has to look like boys built it.
Right.
You know, it's like boys got together and built a fort. How good does it have to look?
So you don't have to put on that persona.
Yeah.
You don't have to put on this is perfect.
Right.
This is something that's being
it's
built.
It's as perfect as we can be.
Right.
It's as perfect as we can be. You know, if we came in with, you know, a bankroll, sure, we'd have fancy fixtures, and it would be maybe a little slicker, but it wouldn't then be Boysfort.
It wouldn't be Boysfort.
And Boysfort is Boysfort.
Mm-hmm.
It may be something later, who knows, but right now, this is what it is. And it's
always evolving, but right now, this is
it'll
what it
always
is.
be, you know, doors for walls and
Yeah.
and funky reuses of things, and it's just how we interpret it, you know. And it's kind of like theater. We essentially we've created like a backdrop for all the great product and found objects and stuff we find.
Now you say that, and you both mentioned that you have a background in theater design. Tell me a bit about that. When did you first draw yourself into creating spaces?
I think from a very early age, it's just like when you create your first fort, and that's why I think the words together, Boysfort, has this connotation with so many people. So many guys had a fort or played in a fort, and a fort could be a blanket over a table.
And girls.
Could be girls too. Girls always say to me, "I had a fort. My friends had a fort, and they would let me play in it." But a refrigerator box could have been a fort.
Right.
My first fort was a huge honeysuckle bramble in Norfolk, Virginia, that I could get into this tiny little hole, and then there was a hollow in the middle of it, and there was a rug in there. There were pictures. There were my Hardy Boy and my Nancy Drew books. So it's like designing. That was my first experience of designing. I think was a fort, putting that together.
And I think that's something we could all relate to.
And it's something we all relate to.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's a place where you just make your own, and you do it with what you have, and you're proud of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a sentiment, you know what, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
I was a
So we
designer
all
at a
are
young
designers
age.
at a very young age, no matter
Yeah.
whether it's our bedroom or it's
Right.
or if you're crawling under your bed and you're just
And
making that better.
And in the most intimate of ways, because you're designing that space just for you.
Right.
Nobody else may see it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just your
I was praying to
private
God no
little
one would
space.
find my fort.
You know, or if people do come into your fort, you invite them in.
Right.
You know, so it's a sacred place. And so Boysfort kind of is that. It's full of little objects and special, well-made, locally made things that you can add to your space. And so that's essentially what Boysfort is.
So you've built this for yourself to invite others in so that they could build theirs.
We hope so. We hope so. That's a really great way to put it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's good.
And now our new thing is, I mean, Portland has so many amazing furniture people and lighting designers. So we're really trying to focus on furniture and space design.
Mhm.
So we have a new tagline.
What's the new tagline?
Furnish your fort.
Oh,
Is that great?
that is great.
That's really great.
That is great.
We're
And you know
real
what, with the
pleased with
story
that.
you just told,
Yeah.
it really does
Yeah.
hit home. I just moved into a new place. And
And isn't it
I
kind of
could
exciting that you look around and go, oh my God, I've got possibilities. And then you just, it's like, because you want to furnish your fort.
Right.
You know, so it's like
Right.
everybody wants, no matter what their fort is, it's like getting your space together, you know? It's
I'll
like,
tell you, I've been calling it my house, and no more will I call it my house. I'm going to call it my fort.
that's great, Chris.
You know, because it is your environment. It's the place where you live. It's the place where you put your feet up, you relax, and you...
You let your guard down. You're
Yeah.
protected.
Yeah.
You know.
It's kind of where you also go to just get your strength back to go back out in the world the next day. You know, it's like you just, yeah, it's pretty important.
You bring up not having funding. Putting this together.
Thanks for rubbing it in.
Yeah, no. And a lot of people, when they see something like what you have here, they get the assumption that this must have come from money. They must have had, a great aunt, or they must come from money. And I think there's something very important for the artist, whether it's the both of you as a business owner or someone who paints antlers, to convey that story that it doesn't come from money, it comes from ingenuity. And that's something I very much see in the both of you. You saw your purpose. You saw how you could make a change in a lot of people's lives. And you do it well.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
That's great.
We try our hardest.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for having me.
Well, thank you, Chris. You're welcome anytime.
I'm very grateful that this is the first episode of Lost in Portland. I couldn't be more grateful for you guys having me here. I think our sentiments are very much aligned, and I wish you the best.
Well, thank you.
In the progression of Boysfort.
We hope the best for Lost in Portland.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.